Long before cities rose and borders were drawn, the lands of the Americas were a living mosaic of nations and tribes, each with their own language, traditions, and sacred way of life. These were peoples who did not just live on the land, they lived with it. They listened to the rivers and the winds, reading nature's messages. They honored the spirits of animals, plants, and the earth itself. They lived in harmony, knowing that all life was deeply interconnected. For thousands of years, their wisdom flourished, shaping societies that understood the delicate balance of nature, spirit, and community. But with the arrival of colonization, much of this knowledge was suppressed, stolen, or forgotten. Yet the voices of the elders, the whispers of the wind, and the wisdom of the land never truly vanished. They still echo in the mountains, in the forests, in the hearts of those who remember. Today we embark on a journey to uncover the ancient knowledge of Native American cultures. What did they believe about life, nature, and the cosmos? What secrets did they understand that modern civilization has lost? And how can their wisdom guide us toward a more balanced and harmonious future? This is not just history, it is a lesson for all of humanity. Let us step into the world of the first caretakers of this land and rediscover the wisdom that time could not erase. Before foreign hands drew borders on maps, before the idea of ownership divided the land, the Americas were home to a vast and diverse world of nations. From the frozen tundras of the north to the lush rainforests of the south, hundreds of civilizations flourished, each with their own language, traditions, and way of life. But despite their differences, they shared a common truth. The earth was not something to be conquered, it was something to be honored. The land belonged to no one, and all belonged to the land. Across the continent, different peoples shaped their world with profound wisdom. The Lakota of the Great Plains followed the bison herds, recognizing them as givers of sustenance and balance, ensuring that no part of the animal was wasted. The ancestral Puebloans built towering stone cities that blended seamlessly with the mountains, harmonizing their architecture with the natural landscape. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy created one of the earliest democratic systems where leaders ruled not for personal power, but for the next 7 generations. The Tupi-Guarani of the southern forests saw nature as a reflection of the divine, believing that every river, tree, and mountain held the spirits of gods and ancestors. The Inuit of the Arctic mastered the art of survival in the harshest climates, reading the ice, the winds, and the stars like an open book, transforming a frozen world into a thriving home. Though separated by vast distances, these nations were not isolated. They built vast trade networks that connected them long before modern globalization. Obsidian from the west was found in the east, and Atlantic shells were discovered deep in the Great Plains. Yet their greatest achievement was not their architecture or their trade, it was their philosophy. They understood something that modern civilization has long forgotten. Humanity is not above nature. We are but one thread in the great web of life. To break that balance is to bring chaos upon all. To them, the land was not a battlefield for empires. It was a sacred home, a living spirit, a gift to be protected. And though the world has changed, their message remains. One continent, 1,000 peoples, and a lesson we are still struggling to learn. The Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy, one of the world's earliest democratic systems, united 5, later 6, great nations under a single, cooperative governance. Decisions were not made for short-term gain. They were made with the next 7 generations in mind. Leadership was not imposed but chosen, and leaders could be removed if they failed to serve the people. This confederation would later inspire the foundation of democratic governance in the United States. In the southwestern deserts, the Hopi people governed through councils of elders, where decisions were made based on spiritual wisdom, not personal ambition. Leadership was not a privilege, it was a sacred responsibility, guided by ceremonies and messages from nature. The Hopi understood something modern leaders have forgotten. To govern wisely, one must listen, not just to people, but to the land, the spirits, and the future. The Lakota of the Great Plains organized themselves into smaller bands, each led by a respected chief. Major decisions, such as war or communal hunts, were made through councils, where warriors and elders spoke as equals. Their decentralized system allowed them to adapt quickly to changing seasons and environmental shifts, ensuring their survival for centuries. Among the Tlingit, Haida, and other coastal nations, societies were structured by clans, where each clan had rights to specific lands and resources. Wealth was not hoarded, it was shared through potlatch ceremonies, where families distributed food, gifts, and prestige to strengthen social bonds. Their economy was not based on greed, but on reciprocity, a system that ensured no one was left behind. Despite their differences, all native societies shared a fundamental truth. No one ruled alone. Decisions were made collectively. Leadership was not about power, it was about service. To them, the greatest leaders were not conquerors but caretakers, those who listened, learned, and gave back. And perhaps in a world plagued by division, greed, and short-term thinking, this ancient wisdom has never been more relevant. For the indigenous peoples of the Americas, spirituality was not separate from life. It was woven into every moment, every action, every breath. To them, the world was not just physical, it was alive with unseen forces. The rivers, the mountains, the animals, all carried spirits, all were sacred. The divine was not distant, it was everywhere. The Lakota believed in Wakantanka, the Great Spirit, not as a singular deity, but as the sum of all energies in the universe, the force that connected all things. Their Sundance ceremony was a ritual of renewal and sacrifice, where dancers would undergo physical trials to honor life cycles and maintain harmony between humans, nature, and the cosmos. To them, suffering was not punishment, it was a pathway to wisdom. The Hopi saw themselves as keepers of balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. Their Kachina ceremonies invoked spiritual beings, messengers between the seen and unseen, to bring rain, fertility, and prosperity. Every dance, every mask, every movement was a sacred act, a way to restore harmony between humans and nature. To them, the spiritual world was not separate from the earthly, it was intertwined. The Tupi-Guarani of South America believed in Terra Sem Mal, the land without evil, a state of spiritual purity and harmony. Through songs, dances, and sacred plant rituals such as ayahuasca, they sought visions to guide their communities and connect with the spirits of the forest. To them, true wisdom was not found in books. It was received through direct experience with the divine. For the Haida and Tlingit of the Northwest, spirituality was woven into art, especially totem poles. These massive carvings were more than sculptures. They were sacred records of ancestry, mythology, and cosmic truths. Every animal, every figure, every line told a story, one that connected the present to the past and the future. Before a hunt, prayers were offered to the spirit of the animal. When planting crops, farmers sang to the earth, asking for blessings. Fire, water, wind, and stone, all were treated with reverence, each carrying its own soul, its own wisdom. For them, life itself was a prayer. And perhaps in today's world of disconnection and materialism, their wisdom holds the key to remembering what we have forgotten, that we are not separate from nature. We are nature. For the indigenous peoples of the Americas, existence was not about individual survival. It was about the web of life. Every creature, every river, every gust of wind had a purpose. Nothing existed in isolation. Everything was part of a greater whole. This was not just a spiritual belief, it was a way of life. They understood something modern civilization has forgotten. What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. To take without giving back disrupts the balance of life. True survival is not conquest, it is coexistence. Among the Lakota, the phrase Mita kuye oyas ing, all my relations, was not just a saying, it was a universal truth. It recognized that humans, animals, plants, and even the stars were part of the same family. Harming one meant harming the whole. This philosophy shaped how they hunted, farmed, built homes, and made decisions, always ensuring that balance was maintained. The Hopi of the Southwest knew that survival in the desert required more than human effort. It required harmony with nature. They planted corn in dry, arid lands, not through force, but through sacred rituals that invoked rain and balance. To them, the land was not a resource, it was a relative. The Haudenosaunee, Iroquois Confederacy, made decisions based on one powerful rule. How will this choice affect the next 7 generations? They saw themselves as temporary caretakers, ensuring that the earth would thrive long after they were gone. Imagine if modern civilization followed this wisdom. How different would our world be? Communities shared resources. There was no hoarding. Food, shelter, and knowledge were distributed for the good of all. Elders were not discarded. They were honored as living libraries of wisdom. Children were not just raised by parents. They were raised by the entire village. To them, selfishness was not survival. Cooperation was. In a world that glorifies individualism, where nature is treated as a commodity, and where people feel more disconnected than ever, perhaps this is the lesson we need most. We are not separate from the world. We are woven into it. And only by remembering this truth can we restore the balance that has been lost. For centuries, the indigenous peoples of the Americas lived in harmony with the land, preserving knowledge that had been passed down for generations. But with the arrival of colonization, this wisdom was silenced, suppressed, and nearly erased. Sacred lands were taken. Languages were banned. Spiritual practices were outlawed. Entire nations were forcibly displaced, their traditions buried beneath foreign rule. Yet despite everything, their wisdom endured. In the 19th and 20th centuries, government policies such as native boarding schools in the United States and Canada sought to eradicate indigenous identities. Children were forcibly removed from their families and forbidden to speak their languages or practice their traditions. But even in the darkest times, knowledge was preserved in secret. The Lakota kept the sun dance alive, despite efforts to ban it. The Hopi continued to share their prophecies, warning of the consequences of straying from nature's balance. The Amazonian tribes protected their plant medicine traditions, ensuring that their healing knowledge would not be lost. For every law passed to erase their cultures, there were elders, warriors, and visionaries who kept the fire burning. Many indigenous traditions foretold a time when humanity would lose its way, a time of great imbalance, greed, and environmental destruction. Among the Hopi, it is said that, when the earth is ravaged and the animals are dying, a new tribe of people will come, from all colors and creeds, who will restore the balance of the world. They will be known as the warriors of the rainbow. These teachings remind us that indigenous wisdom is not just about the past, it is about the future. Because even now, their knowledge is more relevant than ever. The indigenous way of life was not one of domination, but of coexistence. They knew that nature is not an enemy to be conquered, but a home to be honored. They understood that true wealth is not in material possession, but in balance and respect. They lived not for immediate gain, but with the next 7 generations in mind. Today, as we face environmental crises, social division, and spiritual disconnection, their wisdom offers a path back to harmony. Because what they taught was never lost. It has only been waiting for us to listen. Thanks for watching.